So today, as part of our lesson, we'll be studying and talking about the presentation of the temple and the purification of the Blessed Virgin Mary, the fourth joyful mystery. So whenever you hear the number 40, you always need to listen because that's a significant number in the Scriptures. It's a number of completeness or totality. It also refers to the Exodus, which has its own totality to it. So 40 days after the birth of Jesus, so February 2nd, Joseph and Mary are taking the baby Jesus to the temple for two purposes. The reason for the 40 days is because 40 days after birth, the woman had to go and be ritually purified. This was something that was done with any time blood was spilled for any reason, etc., etc. There were many ritual purifications, but the reason the Holy Family is in the temple these 40 days after Christmas is for this particular purification. But they're also there because Jesus, as the firstborn male, must be ransomed. When you hear the word ransom, that's not a common word in English. But if you think about when someone's kidnapped, they ask for a ransom to get the person back, right? And what this points to is the Exodus. So I said the number 40 is a reference to the Exodus. So what is it about the Exodus that Mary and Joseph are fulfilling in the temple? Well, this ransoming of the firstborn was instituted by God because he said, I spared your firstborn. They didn't die like all the other firstborn in Egypt. And so instead of killing your sons with everybody else, you're going to sacrifice to me something appropriate, right? It's always an animal, right? But not, your children did not die, so basically you owe me. Now, God isn't petty like that. When we say, you owe me, we're being petty often, right? But God was teaching his people something important, but they didn't get the lesson until now. Because all of this was to prepare them for the one son who was going to die. The only begotten Son of God, Jesus Christ made man. He was the firstborn that was going to die in place of everybody else. And all of this is involved in this one simple event of them being presented in the temple. So Joseph and Mary are bringing the baby Jesus, although really it's Jesus bringing them to the temple because he's God and he's the one that ordered them to be there, right? It's part of the law of Moses. So they're bringing him to the temple. They're performing these ritual ceremonies of the old law. And as they're doing this, they're met by two important people, Simeon and Anna. Simeon is a high priest, tradition tells us. He and Anna were both told what was going to be happening, so they were there early looking for this family. Simeon takes the child in his arms, he gives thanks, and he prays something which we pray every night as a church, the Canticle of Simeon, the Nunc Dimittis, which is in Compline. So every Wednesday night when we chant Compline, we're praying the prayer that Simeon did when he received the child Jesus in his arms. And he also prophesies to Mary that a sword of sorrow is going to pierce her heart. You're thinking, well, this is a very inappropriate time to be talking like that, Simeon. But again, what is going on here? This ransoming of the baby Jesus, which was done by all of the Jewish families of their firstborn males, is already pointing to the cross. In fact, at the Transfiguration, Moses and Elijah are going to talk about Jesus' passion and death as if it were an Exodus. So it's all tied together. It's all part of the same saving plan. So Simeon gives this prophecy to Our Lady that her heart is going to be pierced with a sword of sorrow. And then Anna, who was a widow, and like a good widow, was spending her time in the temple praying and offering herself to God. She comes, she also is rejoicing to see the child Jesus because she's been told who he is and why he is there, and then she is telling everyone about that. So it's a very beautiful mystery, and ultimately, if you want to tie it back to the Exodus again, the Exodus ends with the Israelites entering the Promised Land, which is only a foreshadowing and a type of heaven. And it's really what the temple is. The temple is God's dwelling on earth. Heaven is God's dwelling eternally. And so this mystery is really a microcosm, a mini picture of salvation history, where God is bringing his people, because remember, even though he's a baby, he's still God, and he's the one who established the law that they were supposed to bring into the temple. So he's bringing his people into the temple by means of a sacrifice of the firstborn, which is he himself.